Hello and welcome to AfriDominion. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you so much for tuning into our program today. Those of you joining us live, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so thrilled and happy that you can find some time out of your busy schedule to join our conversation. We literally come in here to share conversation, to share some of the nuggets, some of the knowledge, information that we want to collect and share amongst one another because of the love we have for our own people. And we are driven by truth, love, and trust in everything that we do, which is why we tell you that everything that we are doing here, we doing it because we want to contribute to our everyday life. Wherever it is that you may be, whatever that you may be doing, it is one of the main goals that we have, that we want to be a part of our nation construction. We want to be a part of the solutions of the issues we have as a people, and because of that reason, we love that you help us out, that you be a part of the conversation, be a part of the driving forces, be a part of the solutions of so many issues that we have going on within our nations all over the world, especially brothers and sisters in Africa. Mainly, this conversation is driven towards African people. So if you feel like we more focus on Africa, that's because the majority of the conversation is literally carried to the to the African audience and the African descendants, but also those of you who are friends of Africa. So we want to make sure that you don't feel so disenfranchised. But we have so many. I want to start by saying that if you haven't already registered, if you haven't already followed our conversation, you can find us out on many platforms. But the main location where we would love for you to find us out, it's on our website, which is www.afridominion.com. www.afridominion.com. Our main email is info@afridominion.com. info@afridominion.com. And with that in mind, guys, welcome again, those of you listening to us live via radio station, television, or social media. I'm so thrilled that you can find some time out of your busy schedule to join the conversation. And with that in mind, since we're running a little bit behind the schedule, I want to jump right in the conversation without wasting any more time. And the topic of today, it's something that may scare some of you, but we mean well. We mean well when we bring in this conversation. And the topic that we want to talk about today is that I ask you, and I'm asking you all, do we not see the beginning of the end of nation constitutions and other common rigid frameworks? Again, do we literally not see the beginning of the end of nation constitutions and other common legal frameworks that, as a people, that we utilize to coexist, to have relationships with nations, communities, between one another? I am posing and I'm asking these questions because there are so many things happening, guys. So many things happening, and most of these things are happening against our livelihood. And so today I wanna take a little bit of a time pointing out signs that we are literally living in the beginning of the end of the so-called government constitutions or nations constitutions and other common legal frameworks. I will do my very best to be quick about it and get in and out so that we can move on to other things happening. And also, in the end, I want to make sure that I talk about a little bit of the consequences and what can we do, or what can we do about this really, in my opinion, this is an emergency, especially for African people, because Africa is being literally destroyed. Africa is being destroyed. Africans are being exterminated today. Many signs. These are not my personal words. These are literally research, things that we are looking and we are finding out. And the majority of our brothers and sisters, you don't see what is happening, but it's happening right underneath of your nose. And most of you are just, you are distracted. You are literally distracted. You are distracted from the most important things that you will be paying attention to. And it is my plea. It is my plea, brothers and sisters, that we literally pay attention. We pay attention because the impact is enormous towards our lives, towards the lives of our children, grandchildren, and those of us, and those who are going to come after we are long gone. And so today, I want to ask of you: do you not see the beginning of the end of nations' constitutions and other common legal frameworks? So I'll get right on it, guys, because I try to figure out a way to break the ice in a way that doesn't shock you. But I don't think that there are ways that I can say it to you in a way that it doesn't shock you. So I sort of like have been observing, and I realize that there are uh, anytime there's a proverb in an African proverb that goes something like this. Um, "Ibijya gushya bibanza gutogota." Like before, before the food is ready, it boils up. It boils up, and then eventually, you know that the food is ready. Things are boiling up in Africa, not just in one country. The whole entire continent is boiling up. And the reasons behind we have so many reasons behind it, but bottom line, a human life is lost. Africa is one of the continent that has been losing its population in great mass. We're talking about millions, and there are no consequences of the perpetrators. There's no legal frameworks. There's no it's like there are no rights anymore in Africa. And I'm not exaggerating it. So many things are changing today that long time ago they have been writing that the end of constitution and the end of common legal frameworks amongst the people, and you would think that it's science fiction. But in Africa today, you can see the signs and you can see when and how it's happening. So I'll get right on it. I want to talk about 9 specific key signs, and help me take a look and see if you may actually observe some of these signs in your own respective countries, because it's important, brothers and sisters, that we get to see what is happening, and it's important that we also align ourselves such that we do not get destroyed in the midst of it. The destruction, it's almost, it's pending. if we do not if we do not unify as Africans, the extermination of African people, African family, it's almost inevitable, because between the wars that are happening and all kinds of means that are being utilized to exterminate Africans, you can literally see it. And the worst part of it, nobody cries for the loss of life. There are no legal frameworks. There are no ways that we currently have set up to go after the perpetrators, to seek justice for the lives that are perishing on a daily basis. And it continues. We look at it as a soap opera. We look at it as a movie, when these are lives of innocent people being lost every single day. So, what are the signs? I have identified a few signs that you can also take a look and see if some of these signs, you can see them in your own respective countries. One of the first signs that I have been observing, it is the loss of state authority or nation authority. If you pay attention in Africa, literally, if you pay attention in Africa, governments are becoming almost irrelevant. The government authorities are almost becoming nullified. People are disrespecting their own respective government, whether elected democratically or whether authoritarians, or whether these governments are set up by power. Bottom line, you can see that today in Africa, a lot of countries, governments have no respect. Today, I want to talk about specifically the example of the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, maybe a little bit of Somalia. We can talk about some other nations as well. But in the DRC, for example, right now, as you have seen, the government in the DRC, it is almost like a government in the movies. From the look of our advantage point, they seem like they have no control over anything that is happening within the country. Specifically, in the east side of the country, in the eastern side of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's been a war for the past 30 plus years. Foreigners go in and out as they please. Millions of people have been dying. They continue to die today. And the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has not been able to squash these wars. One of the deadliest wars, extended wars, where it's officially called a conflict. But when your brother, your sisters, your whole entire family is perishing, and it's called a conflict, come on, those people who call them conflict, they call them because very specific reasons. But it does not take away the fact that millions and millions and millions of innocent lives have already perished within the Congo, and they continue to perish today. So what type of government doesn't protect its own people? What kind of government does not protect its own people? There's literally the loss of control over so many territories. The DRC government doesn't have the control over. Right now, they don't have control over Goma, Bukavu, the northern east side of the country. It's all being occupied by militias. 200 plus militias. 200 plus militias fighting there. One of the militia is rising in ranks because it's being supported by foreigners again. That's one of the signs that very soon you would literally see the fall in the government. The fall in the government, it's almost inevitable in the DRC. As much as the government cannot rule, the people are not listening. Everybody is picking up their own arm. They're carving their own little state. The second sign that I would ask you to take a look: the level of violence. Guys, we're not allowed to show some of these graphic images, but thank God to social media, you can see almost in real time what is happening. Innocent lives are perishing. Violence of the extreme. Rapes from babies all the way to elderlies taking place. Torture of an unimaginable magnitude. People are becoming crazy in the open. People are becoming crazy in the open. And consequently, this whole conflict escalation, it's literally rendering the whole entire country and the whole entire region like literally nullified, useless. People are fleeing in great numbers because they don't want to find themselves caught up in fight, caught up in wars, and continuously losing their lives. A family cannot have its stability. They're constantly fleeing from one camp to another, leaving behind their livelihood, their property, only to be occupied by these militias. In the eyes of the United Nations, in the eyes of some of the most powerful nations who are currently in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, plundering or getting natural resources and all other things that they need at the expense of the lives of the Congolese people. It is so sad. Also, let me bring to your attention the violence that's been happening in Sudan, specifically South Sudan. So remember, Sudan was sliced into two countries. It used to be one nation. If you remember from 2003 up until today, that makes it about 22 years. Instability and violence of in unimaginable magnitude taking place, lives being lost. But nobody cares enough, especially on the global scale. The stakeholders don't care. The lives are being are perishing today. It's crazy. But that's the story of Africans today. Authoritarian took over. You find so many people coming out of the woodwork and taking over governments for various reasons. And when you take over government, whatever form of constitution and legal frameworks that currently exist, oftentimes is suspended. We have had so many coups d'etat in Africa, so many coups d'etat, so many government changes. And those government that are remaining intact are also led by puppets. The so-called representatives of the people who are representing foreign countries, foreign nationals before they represent their own people. But we know that that's been the story of Africa since 200 plus years, 300 plus years, many hundred years, but specifically since the so-called independence of African nations. Africa has yet to be independent as a continent. We have countries by names, but people are literally slaves by reality or in reality. And this cannot continue. We cannot sit by and see this continue to happen. Another sign, public disenfranchisement. The people are not digesting what is happening. So much mistrust and rejection of the legal systems currently. Governments are literally killing their own people over many, many, many things. Like I said, torture taking place, disappearance taking place, um, property seizures taking place. So many ways to undermine a citizen's rights. We see this happening openly. Citizens became slaves, modern slaves today. Calling yourself a citizen, it's almost it means nothing in Africa today. Because at any given moment, your life can be flipped over. At any given moment. Another sign, if you notice, a lot of these African nations, the economy within these respective nations are collapsing. Literally, you have so much crisis, financial crisis taking place in various countries. And we're talking about the financial crisis of greater magnitude that we've never seen before. And the saddest part of it, with such crisis, African governments are not ready. They're not able to actually solve these issues themselves because Africa has been literally putting out a hand, begging for help because of the current infrastructure. The most powerful continent on planet Earth is begging because its people do not have access to the riches. What does that sound to me, to you guys? What does that sound? It sounds like slavery, modern slavery. When you claim to own a property, but you have no right to the property, you have no rights to anything as regards to the property, you are not an owner. You're almost like beneath a caretaker, even though you may brag yourself as an owner. We have so much starvation taking place. We have the currency is falling off in a lot of countries, deliberately, by the way. Currency manipulation. I'm not an economist, but I read. How is it that if you are so rich, if you are so wealthy, your economy, your financial stability doesn't mean anything. Your currency doesn't mean anything as regards to, or when you compare it to the dollar, the euro, the shilling. We're in trouble. We are in trouble. Now, the biggest one is foreign occupation. Africa has been occupied for so many years, for so many centuries. But recently, since the 60s, since that's usually where they talk about the majority independence of African countries, you have also the colonizers still occupy Africa in one way or the other. You have external forces that are imposing their own legal orders against the so-called sovereign nations. You have so many agreements between bilateral agreements and multilateral agreements being signed, whereas African nations themselves, they came last in seeking out their own interest. Look at the DRC as an example. Look at Rwanda. Look at Uganda. In the Great Lakes region, all these nations that we are talking about, they come last in looking after their own interest. The colonizers come first, or the so-called powerful nations. Let me use powerful nations. They come first. They seek out whatever it is that they want before the citizens of these respective nations. Again, if we take the example of the Congo, of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, foreigners are there fighting because of the natural resources. Many foreigners are fighting within the country, killing people, taking over territories, committing all kinds of crimes against humanity, including rapes. And all of this is happening in the eyes of international communities, in the eyes of Africans themselves. And we say nothing about it. Talk about judicial paradises. African courts today, they only serve at the pleasure of their own respective leaders. There's no justice in Africa today, in most of these nations. There's no equality in front of the law of the citizens or the so-called citizens. Those with the most power, those with the most influence, and those who are well connected are given the kind of justice that's only leaned towards their interest, not the people. It is really, 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 really sad. Another sign of the fragmentation of powers. You have so many small entities in various active war nations like the DRC, whereas every single group, it carves its own little small spot, its own little territories. This is treason, guys. Can you just imagine where Maryland is being taken over by militias, Washington, D.C. being taken over by militias, Arlington, Virginia being taken over by militias, New York City in New York being taken over by militias, Chicago being taken over by militias, LA being taken over by militias. You will never, never, never hear of something like that in the United States. Imagine Paris being taken over by militias. Imagine London being taken over by militias. Only in Africa these things are happening, and it's glorified. The Constitution and other common legal frameworks, it's a social contract between the people and those who represent them. When a citizen or when a group of citizens or a group of foreigners decide that they have nullified these social contracts, wars take place, and other nations also become part of it. The Constitution is pretty much suspended or nullified quietly. Would you tell me that today in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Constitution work? It doesn't work. If the Constitution works in the DRC, why are the people in millions dying? How about other legal frameworks? None of them are working towards the people. They're working towards the foreigners. They're working towards those waging wars. Because up to this very moment, the people are still dying. Up to this very moment, the people have the audacity and the means to take over territories. Militias, they're carving their own little states, their own little countries, even though not officially. And consequently, guys, when I see what is happening specifically in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you have basically governments within governments. If you got muscle, if you have foreigners behind you, they pretty much set you up as, as the representative, and you say you're working for your own people, but you're serving at the pleasure of foreigners behind you. And therefore, you do not acknowledge the Constitution nor any other legal frameworks or any legal capacity currently being utilized within the country. You disrespect. Otherwise, you won't pick up arms. It is treason, guys, what is happening in the DRC. I cannot imagine that happening in the United States. I cannot imagine that happening in France, in UK, in Germany, in China, in Russia. Look at the war in Ukraine right now. Guys, why is it that it is okay for the instability to take place in Africa, but it's never okay in the West? It's never okay in Europe. It's never okay in Asia. Why Africa continuously live in these conditions? And the death of the people, innocent people taking place. And the consequences, guys, are immense. If you take a look in the DRC, also if you take a look in countries like Sudan or the so-called South Sudan or Libya, there's a power vacuum right now. Anytime you have a power vacuum as one of these consequences, people do as they please. You have so many warlords ruling over different territories. And consequently, if you set yourself up as a warlord, at any given time you could be taken out. At any given time you could be killed. At any given time, innocent people lose their lives because you could accuse them that they're the one who gave you away. But the worst part of it, the foreigners who are supplying with these weapons are never taken to court, are never taken and never held responsible. I was telling you guys, I think it was yesterday, that a lot of the key manufacturers that create weapons being utilized to destroy millions of Africans today, these manufacturers will never see a light in a day in the courtroom. They will never go face any judge, any legal system anywhere on planet Earth, unless Africans themselves do so. Not only that, the perpetrators, those who are the immediate beneficiaries of the conflicts, of the death, they're quietly enjoying whatever they have been going after. All at the expense of the death of innocent brothers and sisters within Africa. When you have a breakdown of law and order, every single person goes for themselves, which is what the Congolese people You hear of it oftentimes on social medias. That, hey, everybody's going for themselves. What happens to those who cannot help themselves? What happen what happens to those who do not have connections with foreigners? What happened to those who cannot get weapons for themselves to fight for themselves? So we're just gonna write them off and they die and that's it. These instability, guys, are a direct result of bad governance. This instability is a direct result of literally the uprooting of this constitution and legal frameworks. If you are not afraid of law and order, if you are not afraid of breaking rules and regulations, if you are not afraid of breaking the agreements between the people and parties within the countries, you're already telling the rest of the world that, you know what, I do not recognize the constitution, I do not recognize the current law and order. Consequently, I can do as I please. That's what these 200 plus warring groups within the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, are indirectly telling the entire world. And all the stakeholders, especially arm dealers, are also saying we do not recognize Africa. We do not recognize the authority of any African nations, specifically in the DRC. We do not recognize the authority within the DRC. Now we are talking about, or we hear conversation about slicing the DRC into many countries, depending on where the natural resources are. There are a lot of companies today that would not exist without removing and taking the raw material within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, legally or illegally, whichever way that they are able to do it. There are industries that would never exist if they didn't have a hand in what is happening in the Congo today, in the DRC. It is sad, but it is also infuriating that we see this happening over and over and over again towards African people. But it would never happen in the US. It would never happen in China. It would never happen in Russia. It's definitely not going to happen in France or the UK or Canada. But it's okay to take place in any other countries within Africa. Guys, the joke is on us, Africans. When millions of our brothers and sisters are dying, and now one of them sees justice, the joke is on us, Africans. We have so many human right abuses within Africa. The DRC, as one of the examples, Sudan or South Sudan, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, a lot of these current warring countries, we have human right abuses of unimaginable magnitude. We have rapes, literally rapes, being this time recorded now. It's no longer just a story being told by the perpetrators and the victim, but now it's also being recorded and oftentimes being sold on social medias as an entertainment means to others. Imagine witnessing someone being raped, witnessing it, and you purchase that clip and you share it amongst other perverts. It's sad what is happening, guys. There are no legal protections of an average person to let you know that, hey, listen, if anything shall happen, these are the means, this is the mechanism that we have to protect you. We no longer have that in Africa. In general, you have these arbitrarily detentions. You have disappearance of innocent people, innocent lives, unjustified apprehension and seizure of property, unjustified imprisonment without charges, for years at times, months at times, weeks at times. This is the life of, this is like a norm in Africa. And the world is watching day after day. And when I say that these are many ways of exterminating Africans, you guys, this is what I'm referring to specifically. There are many ways that Africans are dying, and the rest of the world is just watching, as they're watching a soap opera, as they're watching a drama series that goes on every single day. But these are lives that when someone dies in the so-called drama of life, you don't reset the next day. They don't come back to life. They are permanently dead, unfortunately. No consequences to the perpetrators. And the family left behind never finds any healing. No condolences, nothing like that, guys. We've become like animals. All of this are the signs that the constitutions of these African nations are being nullified indirectly. The so-called common legal frameworks that would normally help the people to get along together, to have some sort of agreements, parties and parties, people with peoples, families with families, organizations with people, organization between themselves, even the government. All of this is being not just disrespected, but also invalidated through actions. For 30 years, a nation that cannot protect its own people, where foreigners can come in and take over a substantial amount of land, set up their own legal structure, set up their own government within a government. Only in Africa. Only in Africa can you see this. But this is also a straight out disrespect to every single one of us as Africans and African descendant. But also it's a disrespect towards the so-called powerful nations, because they see that happen. They need a lot of these African nations. In one way or the other, they have a hand in the destructions of what is happening in Africa. They have a hand in the genocides that has taken in Africa, that has taken place in Africa. And it continues day after day, day after day. We got these social fragmentations. Guys, this is not the first time race, ethnicities are utilized to fragment African families. Divide and conquer, that's the motto. If you can fragment small groups within African themselves, it'll be easier to literally cause havoc. It'll be easier to foment wars. It'll be easier to disrespect and to disobey rules and law and order. Law and order cannot be followed by the people who believe in very small specific groups of governance only. I don't understand how 200 plus warring groups can be taking an over in the DRC. And the government is literally unable to do anything about it. And it's the government. But we know that that's because foreign powers are behind these 200 plus groups. Chaos, 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 chaos. In chaos, they can plunder. In chaos, they can steal whatever it is that they want. And they don't have to report it. In chaos, they can kill as many Africans as possible. And nobody will cry over them. To make matters worse today, before you would see bodies, now we have incendiary machines. People are being burnt. When you disappear, you disappear. It's a big business now to burn people in the DRC and a lot of other warring nations within Africa. They no longer want to leave bodies behind. They're making sure that those who are being killed are burnt. They're not even burying them anymore, guys, because they are afraid that soon you will go and say such and such was buried there. They're making sure that they leave no evidence behind. Welcome to the new era of warfare for the destructions of Africa and African people. We're watching this day after day, day after day. And we think that most of us, we are immune to it because it's not taking place directly in your countries. But rest assured, guys, the policy is not just one country, it's the entire continent of Africa. The policies that are set in motions are for the destructions of African people and taking over their wealth, their resources to be utilized for the pleasure of other countries and other nations. We cannot allow this to take place, guys. When you see how nations, especially African nations, sometimes they say we are going to isolate you. You're not going to be able to do anything. And at times I'm like, we dare you. You do that. Maybe it might be based that if African nations are isolated, maybe they would actually be forced to form unity. There's no reason why you should be afraid when you are told that you are being isolated. After all, if we really are producing the great minds as Africans, we got to show that in actions. If you're faking that you have great minds, you're producing productive members of society within African continent, yet nothing is happening, that's because you're lying. Why would you need other countries to the degree that Africa needs these countries if we can be self-sufficient? But I will play with you, and I will submit to you all that Africa can be self-sufficient. It's in our minds that we cannot be self-sufficient because we have been turned into slaves. A slave is not allowed to do as he or she pleases. A slave works and serves at the pleasure of the master. Africa and African people are serving at the pleasure of the colonizers, the masters. And we have to literally get rid of this whole system. And I know this talk is rough, but that's the truth. It's literally the truth. We have the so-called dictators. My dictator is there's a, I don't remember the way it's said. When remember, through tribalism, through ethnicities, if you come from my ethnic group and you are so-called a dictator, I say, okay, I'd rather take my dictator over your dictator. Remember, divide and conquer. Fragment as many times as possible, because as long as we are fragmented into many, many thousands of little pieces, we cannot come together as one and fight off the enemy. We have one enemy, but that same enemy goes behind all these thousands of fragmented groups, and they deal with every single one of them. While we're fighting amongst ourselves, the enemy goes behind and take over what they need, from natural resources to our minds, to our soul, to our spirit. Everything is being plundered outside of Africa, and we have a role in it. We are making it happen today, which is so sad. Guys, one of the saddest consequences of what is happening is the loss of national identity, the loss of people's identity. When you have given up your true self, you have to take on somebody's identity. Africa and African people, we have mastered becoming other people's except ourselves. We have been stigmatized to the degree we are not proud to be who we are. The majority of Africans are very, very stigmatized to the degree they even hate themselves. Now, if you hate yourself, no wonder others hate you as well. If you have zero self-esteem towards yourself, you won't find any self-esteem being sent to being given by others. If you're not respecting yourself, others won't respect you. That's just the nature of the beast. And today you can see it throughout Africa. We have so many people who have zero self-esteem, who hate themselves, who do all kinds of heinous things towards themselves, towards their family, towards their communities, who commit treason in the open towards their own family, towards the communities, and towards the nations and the continent. So we are sick and we have to literally fix ourselves. Best believe the master isn't going to give you the medicine that you need. But the time is now that we're going to have to take back that which is ours. We have to do it, guys. We have to do it ourselves. And unfortunately, it's not that easy. Not only it's not that easy, but the price is stiff. The price is stiff. And the sacrifice is going to be heavy. And again, a lot of brothers and sisters will not be putting themselves in harm's way. They will rather prefer being slaves than actually freeing themselves. This is a tragic time period that we are living in as Africans. But it's also the most exciting time period to live in because we have the opportunity to unify, to solidify ourselves, and to fight off against every enemy of ours, every perpetrator of ours, every individual, every group, every organization that is literally committing treason. We have to fight them off. We must fight them off, because failure to do that, it's literally an acceptance of our own death. It is literally an acceptance of our own destruction. It is literally an acceptance of our own extermination as African people and African descendants. It's happening not only in Africa, but also outside of Africa. That's the most unfortunate part that actually saddens me the most. But hey, enough with the tales. We cannot be crying when our people are dying like this. We have to literally stand up and be courageous and fight as much as we must, even if it means that we die fighting. At least so that our people tomorrow can find peace, can exist in Africa, can live well, develop ourselves, and not become beggars on the global platforms when we are the wealthiest on the global platforms. It makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. So coming back to my brothers and sisters in the DRC, what is happening? It's unacceptable. Building a government within another government, it's unacceptable. Every perpetrators and those who have a hand in it, we must blast them up in the open. Be courageous and speak up, guys. The last I checked, Congolese own zero gun. They do not manufacture guns. The last I checked, these 200 plus warring groups have to buy weapons outside of the Congo, the DRC. Rwanda doesn't manufacture weapons. Uganda does not manufacture weapons. The Central African Republic does not manufacture weapons. Angola does not manufacture weapons. There are at least 10 countries that borders the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Tanzania does not manufacture weapons. How is it that you can tell me that all these warring groups are able to have access to guns, to have access to weapons of mass destructions, and it's acceptable and it's okay? I do not digest that at all. And that's when we have to be honest with ourselves. Sudan, the last I checked, doesn't manufacture any weapons. So all these countries surrounding or bordering the DRC, I don't think any of them manufactures weapons. Zimbabwe does not manufacture any weapon. So how do you explain that weapons are going in and out? Malawi does not manufacture any weapon. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. Even as I'm thinking about it, I don't think Zambia creates or manufactures any weapon. I don't even think in Africa, with the exception of South Africa. South Africa manufactured a little bit of weapon parts. I don't think that they have any fully fledged weapon manufacturers. But the fact that we are becoming the lab rats when it comes to the latest gadget in weaponry, our lives are on the line, and that as evidence, people have to die. People have to die because someone is accepting that these weapons come in our homeland, come in our own communities. Someone is literally empowering a lot of these warring groups, and that someone is never going to see a judge. We never see the light in any judicial system on planet Earth because it's in Africa. This is sad, guys, and this is the discrimination at its highest. Straight up, this is straight out discrimination against African people and African family. Open discrimination, because we are now considered as fully fledged human beings. That we know. But if someone thinks less of you, are you also going to think less of yourself? That's one of the things that challenges me every single day. I would not accept that personally. You may think that I'm no good to nothing. That's your thought. Your opinion doesn't change who I am as a person. And that's how we ought to carry ourselves as Africans. Which is why it's also imperative that we unify, not just as a people, but also as countries. It's imperative that we unify as one people. Because if we unify, we can fight off the enemy all the way from east to west, from north to south. As one people, the enemy will not be able to come through. So I would literally plead with you, brothers and sisters, my Africa. We literally have to unify as one people all over again. As hard as it could be, let that be one of the things that we literally fight for. Even if it means that we lose our lives attempting to unify ourselves, so be it. Other nations are literally reorganizing themselves. Other nations are repositioning themselves to come right back to Africa, to enslave, to continue the slavery of African people, to continue the plundering of African raw materials, the wealth of Africa. Industries globally are living off African raw materials. Did you guys know? I will just throw this in here. The industry of electric vehicle would not exist today without the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Listen to what I'm saying, guys. The global industry, electric vehicle industry, would not exist without the Democratic Republic of the Congo today. And you wonder, how is it that you've never heard of a lot of these major automobile makers, major electric automobile makers? How come you have no idea the role that they play in the DRC, openly and behind the scenes? Humanity would not be able to go to the moon, to Mars, without the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Guys, I want you guys to know that. Right now in the United States, we're talking about private companies going to the moon, private companies going to Mars. You will not be able to go to Mars without the raw material from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yet, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has zero stakes in the investment going to Mars, zero stakes in the investment going to the moon. Because the people are disrespected. The country is being disrespected. As we speak, right now, the DRC is going to be sliced into pieces until or unless we Africans stop it. It's inevitable. The country has already been pre-marked of what it's going to look like after it has been sliced up. This is no joke, guys. It is happening the same way in Sudan. They sliced it into two countries. And the more you're slicing nations, the more those issues remain. One side of the people will find themselves in behind the borders, and the other side will find on the other side of the borders. They become two different citizens of the same families. What the heck, guys? We have a lot of work to do. But the work we have to do requires that all of us will become courageous, that all of us will become aware of what is happening. And all of us will stop sugarcoating of the issues as they are happening. So, as I started saying, today, the beginning of the end of constitutions, it's visibly seen, you can see it today. Nations are losing their constitutions. Nations are losing their own legal frameworks, including in these so-called powerful nations. The checks and balances are becoming a things of yesteryear. There's no longer checks and balances today. Which means if I'm strong enough, I can come in and take over whatever it is that I want to take over. I can come in and take over your property, your resources, your people, everything that I need, I can come in and take it. What you gonna do? Nothing. And that's what we are witnessing literally in 2025, guys. It's like gangsters coming in and take over whatever it is that they need. Or a king coming and taking whatever he or she needs. King or queen. What is happening to us, humanity, guys? What is happening to us? Anyway, I want to hear your comment before I roll out, because I have promised you guys. That I would literally read, and I will give you some time. If you have something to say, give me a call, guys. Where's my phone? Or you can jump into Zoom if you feel like want to say something. But I want to tell you guys that what is happening, it doesn't only affect one country or one nation. It is affecting the entire continent, but also it's affecting the global community. What is happening to Africans will have ramification towards the entire world. But I plead that the majority of you, the majority of us, can become fearless faster, so we can stop the genocide being committed against our people, so we can stop the extermination of our own people. Guys, it makes no sense how we have every raw material to create medicine, every raw material to protect ourselves, every raw material to feed ourselves. Yet we are continuously expressing our beggar professionalism. We are begging the entire world. Only slaves beg to the master. Independent people, free men and women, provide for themselves. Free men and women work hard for themselves. It's about time that we work for ourselves, guys. Whatever we need, we work hard for it. And we stop begging. There is no need to go beg when we have it all. Why should you beg something you can get for yourself? And I don't understand what is happening to us. And it's really sad that it's happening, because we actually we allow it to happen. We literally allow it to happen. And I would say to you guys that the time is now that we stop. We have to stop it, because failure to do that, it's also going to guarantee the death of our brothers and sisters. That's not scaring any of you. Ask right now the Sudanese families that have lost millions of their own people. Ask the Somalians who have lost many of their own people. Of course, we were just talking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Central African Republic, Mozambique, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. Guys, we have wars that are set to continue indefinitely unless we change it ourselves. And my question becomes, at what point am I going to feel like, you know what, the issues that are happening to my brothers and sisters are my issues as well. Therefore, I have to have a part in it. There's a role for every single one of us. Because if that issue isn't my issue, I won't even care looking for the solution or solutions. If you don't see that the pain of one Africa is the pain of all Africans, you will never take the time, take the energy, take your resources to fight off the enemy as one people. So the time is now, guys. The time is now, my Africa. There is a war that has to be won. But above all, there are lives that must be protected. The master isn't going to protect the lives of your child, the lives of your father, your mother, your spouse, your uncle, your aunties, because we are now fully regarded as human beings. And therefore, your rights are almost no rights. Heck, your rights are no rights in the eyes of some who sees you as beneath a human being. So let not that be you. If someone is devaluing you in your life, do not also go and clap and support and devalue yourselves as well. Guys, the time is now that we have to do what we have to do for our own people. Now, I want to finish up this conversation because they are telling me that we have another program that we have to go to. But it's sad, guys. It is very sad because we are losing the social contracts amongst ourselves. As bad as it could be, or as bad as it is, if the social contract that we have amongst ourselves is lost, can you imagine how difficult it's going to be the unity? Or can you imagine how difficult it's going to be to unify ourselves as Africans? And in order for us to fight off the enemy, we have to be unified as one. There has to be some sort of law and order that guide our every move as a people, that allow us to coexist between each other, between families. Without law and order, the chaos itself is going to ensure our destruction, either between ourselves or the enemy just coming in and wiping off what we haven't done ourselves. Do you really want to be a part of that? I personally cannot see myself being a part of that. I personally cannot be a part of that. But I am willing to also be a part of liberating our own people. I am already in the midst of it. And I want to invite every single one of you guys to be a part of that as well. Because the consequences are grave for all of us, not just one person. The consequences is for the collective, not just one person. The failure is for the collective. It's towards the entire collective African people, not just one group. not one family, not one person. So today, if you see Sudan under fire, if you see the DRC under fire, if you see Mozambique under fire, if you see the Central African Republic under fire, if you see Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso under fire, if you see Rwanda, Uganda under fire, there's so many nations that have instability. And if you just become a bystander and do nothing, also be ready to reap the benefit, to reap the consequences of what is happening as a failure of not having taken action. So, guys, that's it for me. Let me be out of here. There's so much to do, so much to do. But I want to play with you guys. The time is now that we work together. The time is now that we actually that we save ourselves as Africans. The time is now that we seek our own interests first and foremost before we see others, because others are already seeking out their own interest, and we're coming last. So if someone is literally putting you behind their own priorities, and you yourself don't put your priorities ahead, you're already dead. You are dying. So let's figure out our own priorities as Africans, and let's put the energy together. Let's unify ourselves and literally work for our own interest as well as one people. Failure to do that guarantees our own self-destruction, guarantees our own extermination. These words, I'm literally using them deliberately because that's what's going to happen to us. We will be exterminated, guys, as Africans. Our inheritance, our natural resources, and all that we're out to get will be in the hands of other foreigners. Who wants that? Certainly not me. So with that in mind, guys, allow me to get out of here. There's so much to do. I want to give you guys a huge thanks for the time you have given me. But I also want to plead and asking you guys to please, please, please fight for your own families. Please fight for your communities. Let's work together and fight for our own families. Let's get together and fight for our own communities. Let's get together and form one nation, one African nation, not 50-something, 60-something. And let us not allow the DRC to be sliced into many countries. It is what's going to happen, guys. Listen to what I'm saying. Watch my lips. The DRC is being sliced into many parts. That's the end point. Just like Sudan became 2 countries. You do not want the DRC to become multiple countries. And that's what's being sought today at the expense of innocent lives. So, guys, thank you so much. I want to wish you guys a beautiful day. Those of you who are going to bed, I want to wish you a beautiful night. If you are waking up, have a beautiful morning. And if you are on the time that we have here in the United States, we have 4:10. I want to wish you a super fantastic afternoon and good evening. Until I see you guys again, I'm Freeman Singiran Kabo here at AfriDominion Studio. Have a beautiful day. God be with you.